My boyfriend mocked my weight, my clothes, my looks, claiming he was keeping me motivated. When I discovered he entered me in a humiliating online contest to rate your girlfriend, the backlash he faced ended his influencer dreams overnight. The night he turned me into a joke in front of our friends still plays in my mind like a scene I can't erase. The laughter around the table wasn't cruel, but it was sharp enough to slice through my confidence. I sat there in a dress I had chosen carefully, only to hear him sneer that I looked like I had borrowed it from my mother's closet. My cheeks burned, my smile froze, and I swallowed the humiliation like it was part of the meal. That was the moment I realized the cracks in our relationship weren't small. They were spreading fast. At first, I tried to convince myself it wasn't serious. Maybe he was just teasing. Maybe I was overreacting. But when we got home, I asked him why he said it. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Relax," he muttered. "It was just a joke. You're too sensitive." That phrase became his weapon, a way to silence me whenever I dared to confront him. And slowly I began to believe it. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I needed to toughen up. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. When we first met, he was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, ambitious, attentive. He remembered little details about my day, opened doors, and told me I was beautiful. He had this energy that drew people in, the kind of confidence that made him seem unstoppable. I admired that. I thought being with him would make me stronger too. But those compliments didn't last. They shifted into criticisms disguised as advice. "You'd look better if you lost a few pounds. That shirt makes you look bigger than you are. Try harder with your makeup. People notice." He framed it as motivation, claiming he wanted me to be my best. Yet every word chipped away at me, leaving me smaller, quieter, less sure of myself. One afternoon at the mall, I stopped at a boutique window, admiring a dress. It was bright red, bold, the kind of dress that made you feel alive. He glanced at it and laughed. "That's not for you. Too tight. You'd look ridiculous." I laughed too, because what else could I do? But inside I felt the sting. I didn't buy the dress. I didn't even step inside the store. That moment stayed with me, not because of the dress, but because of how quickly I abandoned something I wanted just to avoid his ridicule. The worst moments were at social gatherings. He had a talent for turning me into the punchline. At a barbecue, someone complimented my outfit. He grinned and said, "Yeah, she finally listened to me for once." Everyone laughed and I smiled weakly, but my stomach twisted. Another time, during a game night, he joked about how I eat like a truck driver. The room erupted in laughter and I wanted to disappear. I began to dread these outings, not because of the people but because of him. At night, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if love was supposed to feel this way. Was it normal to feel so diminished, so small, in the presence of someone who claimed to care for me? I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who laughed freely, wore what she wanted, and didn't second-guess every choice. That girl felt far away, like a stranger I once knew. I tried to confront him in private, hoping he would understand. "It hurts when you say those things," I whispered one evening. He sighed, annoyed. "You're imagining things. I'm just trying to help you improve. You should thank me." His words left me speechless. Thank him? For humiliation, for the erosion of my confidence? The cracks widened with every incident. Like the time I bought new shoes, excited to show him. He looked at them and said, "Those make your legs look stubby." Or the time I cooked dinner, proud of the recipe I had tried. He tasted it, grimaced, and said, "Not bad, for someone who doesn't know what seasoning is." Each remark seemed trivial on its own, but together they formed a steady drip of disdain that wore me down. One night at his friend's apartment, we were playing cards. I made a mistake in the game and he laughed, saying, "She's not just bad at cards, she's bad at picking clothes too." The room erupted in laughter and I sat there frozen, my smile plastered on like a mask. Inside though, something shifted. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was anger. That anger simmered quietly, hidden beneath the surface. I didn't show it, not yet. But it grew with every remark, every dismissal, every moment he made me feel less than. The quiet nights became heavier. I lay awake, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how someone who claimed to love me could treat me this way. I thought about the promises he had made, the image he projected to the world. Charming, ambitious, supportive. And I thought about the reality I lived with. The jokes, the humiliation, the constant erosion of my spirit. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to leave me questioning my worth. doubting my choices, shrinking into silence. The cracks behind the smile were widening, and though I didn't know it then, those cracks would eventually shatter everything. The cracks had widened, but I didn't realize how deep they ran until the night I stumbled across something that made my stomach twist. I was sitting alone in the living room, scrolling through my phone when a notification popped up from a friend. It was a link, no explanation, just a short message. "You need to see this." Curiosity turned quickly into horror. The page opened to an online contest titled, "Rate Your Girlfriend." My photo was there, one I hadn't even known he had taken. It was cropped awkwardly, my smile frozen mid-laugh, and beneath it were numbers, comments, and cruel jokes from strangers. They picked apart my weight, my clothes, my hair, even the way I stood. Some laughed, others mocked, and all of it was public. My chest tightened as I scrolled, each word cutting deeper than the last. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I realized who had submitted it. His username was right there, bold and unmistakable. He had entered me into this contest, parading me like a prop for strangers to judge. My mind raced. Why? What kind of person does that to someone they claim to love? The rage came first, hot and blinding. Then humiliation, heavy and suffocating. I felt exposed, stripped of dignity, as though the entire world had been invited to laugh at me. And beneath it all was disbelief. I wanted to tell myself it wasn't true, that maybe someone had stolen his account, that maybe it was a mistake. But the evidence was clear. He had done this. When he walked through the door later that night, I was still sitting there, the glow of the screen lighting my face. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling but sharp. I shoved the phone toward him. He glanced at it, then smirked. "Oh, that's his content. Don't be so dramatic." "Content," I repeated, my voice rising. "You put me in a contest where strangers rate me like I'm some product?" He shrugged, tossing his keys on the counter. "It's harmless. People do this all the time. Gets engagement. You should be happy you're helping my career." Happy. The word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I stared at him, searching for any sign of remorse, but all I saw was smugness. He didn't care about the humiliation I felt. He cared about clicks, likes, numbers on a screen. "You humiliated me," I whispered, my throat tight. "Do you even understand that?" He rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting. Nobody cares. It's just the internet." But people did care. Within hours, the contest spread beyond his followers. Screenshots circulated, comments piled up, and soon the backlash began. Strangers who had once admired his confidence now called him out for cruelty. Words like disrespectful and toxic filled his feed. Sponsors pulled out, collaborations vanished, and his follower count dropped like a stone. I watched it unfold silently. He paced the apartment, ranting about haters and cancel culture, slamming doors and cursing under his breath. He begged me to post something defending him, to tell people it was all a misunderstanding. "If you just say you're fine with it, they'll back off," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. But I stayed quiet. I didn't post, didn't defend, didn't shield him from the storm he had created. My silence was deliberate, and it was powerful. For once, I didn't let him twist the narrative. I let the world see him exactly as he was. The days that followed were chaotic. His phone buzzed constantly with angry messages, his inbox flooded with brands cutting ties. He tried to spin it, recording videos where he claimed it was just a joke. But the more he spoke, the worse it got. People weren't buying it. They saw through the charm, the bravado, the excuses. Meanwhile, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The humiliation was still raw, but beneath it was a sense of justice. For so long he had mocked me in private, chipped away at my confidence, made me doubt myself. Now his cruelty was exposed for everyone to see. And I didn't have to lift a finger. One evening he sat across from me at the kitchen table, his face pale, his voice strained. "You don't get it," he said. "This was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to make me stand out. Now everything's ruined." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how empty his words were. He wasn't sorry for what he had done to me. He was sorry for what he had lost. His career, his image, his followers. That was what mattered to him. Not me. Not my dignity. "You ruined it yourself," I said quietly. "And I'm not going to fix it for you." He stared at me, stunned, as if he couldn't believe I had spoken back. But I didn't flinch. I held his gaze, letting him see the anger, the hurt, the resolve that had been building inside me. The silence between us was heavy, but it was mine. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking, apologizing, doubting. I was the one standing firm. And in that silence I found my revenge. The silence between us lingered long after that night, but for me it was no longer heavy. It was liberating. I had chosen not to defend him, not to shield him, and in that choice I felt the first spark of freedom. While he scrambled to salvage his image, I began to salvage myself. The days that followed were strange. My phone buzzed constantly, but not with cruelty. This time it was kindness. Messages poured in from people I didn't even know, strangers who had seen what happened and wanted me to know I wasn't alone. Some shared their own stories of being belittled, others simply offered words of encouragement. You deserve better. Stay strong. We see you. Each message was like a hand reaching out, pulling me from the shadows he had kept me in. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months called, their voices warm and steady. One evening, my childhood friend Sarah showed up at my door with a bag of takeout and a bottle of sparkling water. You don't have to sit in this alone, she said, settling onto my couch. We ate, laughed, and for the first time in weeks I felt light. Her presence reminded me of who I used to be. The girl who loved silly jokes, who wore bright colors, who didn't shrink under someone else's opinion. Small victories began to shape my days. I walked into a store and bought a dress I loved without asking anyone's approval. It was floral, flowing, and unapologetically bold. When I wore it out, I felt a rush of joy, not because anyone complimented me but because I had chosen it for myself. I started cooking again, experimenting with recipes I had once abandoned after his criticism. The kitchen filled with the scent of garlic and herbs, and I realized how much I had missed the simple pleasure of creating something with my own hands. Even routines that had felt heavy under his judgment became sources of comfort. I went for walks in the park, listening to music that made me smile. I lingered at coffee shops, savoring quiet mornings with a book. These weren't grand gestures, but they were mine, reclaimed pieces of a life I had almost forgotten. As I grew stronger, I found myself speaking more openly about what had happened. At first, it was with close friends, late-night conversations where I let the words spill out. How he mocked me, how he dismissed me, how he betrayed me. But soon, I realized my story resonated beyond my circle. When I shared it online, cautiously at first, the response was overwhelming. People listened. They related. They thanked me for saying what they couldn't. Turning my pain into a story gave me back my voice. For so long I had been silenced, told I was too sensitive, too dramatic. Now my words carried weight. They weren't just mine. They belonged to anyone who had ever been diminished, mocked, or dismissed. And in sharing them, I felt a strength I hadn't known before. Meanwhile, his downfall continued. The brands that once praised him cut ties. His followers dwindled. The confident persona he had built cracked under the weight of his own arrogance. I watched from a distance, not with glee but with clarity. His loss wasn't mine to carry, it was his consequence. One afternoon I passed him in the street. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. He glanced at me, searching for something, maybe pity, maybe forgiveness. I gave him neither. I simply walked on, my head held high. That moment taught me something important. Revenge doesn't always mean action. Sometimes, it means living well, refusing to be dragged back into the chaos someone else created. Living well became my quiet rebellion. I poured energy into things that mattered. Friendships, hobbies, self-care. I joined a local art class, painting with colors I once avoided because he said they didn't suit me. I traveled with friends, exploring places I had long dreamed of but never dared to visit. Each step forward was a reminder that I was no longer defined by his cruelty. The more I embraced my freedom, the more I understood self-worth. It wasn't about proving him wrong or proving myself to anyone else. It was about recognizing that I had always been enough, even when he tried to convince me otherwise. My worth wasn't tied to numbers on a screen, to comments from strangers, or to the approval of someone who thrived on tearing me down. One evening, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, I reflected on everything. The humiliation, the anger, the silence, the recovery, it all led me here. I realized that the end of his influencer dreams wasn't just his downfall. It was my beginning. His collapse marked the moment I stepped out of his shadow and into my own light. I no longer carried the weight of his words. I no longer questioned if love was supposed to feel like pain. Instead, I carried the lessons. Never let someone define me through cruelty, never shrink to fit someone else's idea of worth. And as I looked out at the city lights, I felt a quiet peace. Rising from the ashes wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something stronger from it. And I had.